The Office of the Solicitor General says that the International Criminal Court or ICC's failure to rule on the issue of jurisdiction over the Philippines could be used as a precedent in future cases.
Kung kayo pupunta sa lugar na maaring ang ICC, makialam. Kasi dito, hindi sila pwede makialam talaga rito. Sa ibang bansa, kung tingin natin ay may pagkaalangan, di mag-usap muna kami kung aalis sila, kung pupunta sila sa ibang bansa na maaring magkaroon ng problema. Kasi ano yan eh, they're citizens of the Republic who also need our protection. So we have to tell them.
Expected ko na yun, yung kanilang insistence na makialam sa ating domestic affairs dito sa ating bansa. Consistent sila na ganoon talaga. So hayaan mo sila. Maniguro rin ako. Bakit hindi ako pupunta doon sa mga bansa na friendly sa ICC?
President Marcos Jr. agrees to the Philippines' full disengagement with the International Criminal Court. He said the government would not cooperate, describing the probe as an attack on the country's sovereignty.
President Bongbong Marcos says the country is done with the International Criminal Court and its insistence to probe the Duterte regime's war on drugs. For the Justice Department, investigation and prosecution of those involved in abuses will go on, but without the ICC's interference. But with only a few convictions so far, how long will victims have to wait before justice is served by anyone? We discuss in this episode of the Chiefs. Welcome to this Thursday edition of the Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay. Kasama po natin ngayon dito sa Mandaluyong, Ed Lingao of One News, Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief ng Philippine Star. Chiefs, happy Thursday!
Happy Thursday!
Isang araw na lang.
Mukhang gumaganda na yung weather, kaya happy na tayo. Alam, nakaalis na ba? Nakaalis na ba si Egay?
Oo, nakalis na. Malapit na sa Taiwan eh.
Oo.
Kaso may papalapit naman daw na low pressure area
Isa
na
pa,
naman.
sa linggo naman
Kung
yun.
matuloy
Oo
siya
nga.
si Falcon.
Yes, si Mr. Falcon.
Parang si Jet X44.
Oo nga.
Natanda niyo yun.
Wala nakagets nun.
Si Ed lang po nakakatanda nun.
Tony Falcon,
Yeah.
Agent X44.
Walang nakagets nun sa mga nanonood sa atin.
Siya lang nga.
Tingin mo mga bata nanonood sa atin?
Hindi. Marami nakaintindihan, marami nakagets. Pero ano, baliban sa weather, ano pang mga, yung mas mainit na binabantayan natin?
Medyo problema natin sabi nga tinigil na daw ng India ang pag-export, slow down ng export ng non-basmati rice. So meaning yung mga ordinaryo nating kinakain.
Yung kinakain natin, yung basmati kasi mas mahal yan eh.
Yes, yun na nga,
Specialized kind
yung
of rice.
kinakain
Pero
natin.
India lang ba yan? Kasi hindi lang naman doon tayo
May mga
nag-aangat.
balita na tayo noon pa, di ba? Na even Thailand and Vietnam are main export
Import sources,
naging slow down na rin dahil nga dito sa continuing problem sa fertilizer, lahat-lahat na, di ba?
And you imagine even if, well, I think India's number 5 in our list of countries we import from. But even if it wasn't number 5, ang laki ng export market ng India. So whatever it does with its exports of rice will affect everything else.
Kasi that's one thing we learned every time we talk about external forces, di ba? Whether it's commodities or oil, di ba? Yung pagka global yung supply problem mo, pipila tayong lahat.
Kabit-kabit lahat yan.
So, kabit-kabit.
Kaya malaki problema natin because we are a big rice importing
So, lalayo na
country.
naman tayo sa 20 pesos per kilo.
Yan ang problema.
In fact,
natin.
yung FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization ng UN, they raised a warning na with India's move, expect mamroblema ang mga may hirap.
Yes.
Mahirap all over the world, not just the major exporters, all over the world, mamroblema yan.
Kasi napakalaki nga ng mga
Prices will
export
go up.
nila. Rice export nila napakalaki. Lahat ng countries nga, syempre, kanya-kanya yan nag-aalala din lahat So, ewan ko kung anong magagawa natin. Well, niro-roll out naman natin masagana 99. di ba?
At
Medyo,
saka kadiwa, pinapalaganap pa rin
Oo.
ni President Marcos, binanggit niya rin niya mga yan
Yes.
sa
State of the Nation
Ah,
address.
O pwede rin, kamote na lang tayo.
Mahal ang kamote, no?
Tsaka natin in close places, di ba?
Ang sarap-sarap ng mga kamote ngayon pati,
Bago natin magpatuloy dyan kay Ed. Anyway, ang pagkagawa lang naman natin, patuloy natin pag-uusapan niya. We will of course have to devote more episodes still on the matter of prices and our commodities. But for now, we will be talking about the ICC investigation, the DOJ's promise na we will also be investigating. But we will be bringing our first guest on these topics for this evening after a break. The Chiefs will be right back. Welcome back to the Chiefs. Joining our discussion tonight, Department of Justice Senior Undersecretary RAUL VASQUEZ. Good evening, Undersecretary VASQUEZ. Welcome po to the Chiefs.
Evening, sir.
Good evening, Usec.
Good evening, Ami, Ed, and Attorney Robbie. And good evening to all your televiewers and listeners.
Baka po may maniwala sa inyong attorney. Robbie lang.
Pwede mong panautorize.
Robbie, sige.
Lugi yung mga kamag-anak kong nag-aaral talaga. Anyway, pag-usapan po natin yung ICC investigation because sinabi nyo nga po kung talagang ipipilit nila yan, there might be an outright confrontation, sabi nyo. Maybe just to make it clear for people, ano po bang eksena ang pwedeng mangyari? Kung sakaling humantong talaga sa ganun, na magtagpo halimbawa sa airport o kung aabot man doon, what does a confrontation potentially look like?
Actually, Robbie, it's not a confrontation issue naman because the Philippines is a law-abiding and responsible member of the United Nations. We, despite the fact that we have already withdrawn from the ICC, from the Rome Statute, we remain a member of the United Nations, and we are also signatory to various conventions and treaties. So we remain true to our commitment as a responsible, law-abiding, and diligent member of the world of nations. Yung confrontation na sinasabi ay hindi po mangyayari yan in the sense na maging physical and all that. Kasi bago po pupunta ang isang grupo, lalo na pag representatives from international organizations, there is normally a request that is coursed through the DFA. They just don't come here and out of thin air pupunta na lang, nandyan na lang sa ating mga airports natin. Hindi po ganun. And besides, that would be a policy issue on how to handle that. And our President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. has already spoken that from here on, there will be a total disengagement from the ICC.
Okay.
But when it comes to a point that the ICC would insist on what they perceive to be their authority to conduct further investigation on certain alleged crimes that were committed in the Philippines, there is a range of options that may be undertaken by the Philippines. Number one could be pwede nilang totally ignore ang ICC investigators. Pwede rin namang, in other words, we can just walk away from any further engagement. Or we could discuss parameters by which they could come in. Or we could just ignore the ICC's handling of the Philippine situation. In other words, that would be a policy issue that would be within the jurisdiction and authority of the executive department, meaning to say the presidency.
Usec, obviously you are speaking for the government. and also for the scenario of ICC investigators actually physically coming into the country. But with respect to the ICC per se, conducting an investigation, and all their options without having to come into their country. For example, if they were to invite resource persons outside of our country, if resource persons were to be the ones to meet them abroad, or for that matter, virtual investigations via Zoom or any of these online meeting platforms, would that be possible, and would that be within their capacity to undertake?
Yes, certainly it is, because the ICC itself already declared by a 3-2 vote that they do have jurisdiction to continue on with the investigation. So that means to say that the investigation could be done outside of the Philippines by a physical investigation, face-to-face, or virtual, as you mentioned. But the matter of investigation is one thing, the area of implementation would be another. So with respect to the further conduct of proceedings, if that is the point of your question, certainly they can continue.
Okay.
Because they already assumed jurisdiction based on a cliffhanger of a vote, if I may say, 3-2. If one of the three judges would have decided or sided with the minority, which incidentally included the presiding judge himself.
Usec, linawin ko lang yung statement mo earlier, no? You are not yet completely closing the door to the ICC coming here. Kasi sabi nyo, you will still be discussing this if they course their request through the DFA. Tama ba yung appreciation namin ng statement?
That is one of the options, Ami, that the government, that the Philippine government has. But at this point, the declaration of the president that there would be total disengagement is only in respect to the legal proceedings.
Yes.
But as to whether or not there will be arrangements that may be undertaken by which they could come in, that is within the discretion of the executive department.
Okay, what about...
As I said, one option is to totally ignore the ICC proceedings or walk away.
Okay, what about Filipinos who might be more open to cooperating with the ICC instead of the DOJ? Kasi that's what Menardo Guevara told us, that they are having problems looking for witnesses, even for the relatives of the victims to come out, natatakot daw eh. But these people might be less scared to go to the ICC or not, kahit hindi physically, no, to cooperate with the ICC in their investigation. What will the government do in those cases? Will you stop those people from cooperating with the ICC?
Certainly not, because everybody has the constitutional right to travel. They have also the right to prosecute what they feel, what they believe would be lawful causes. And if they believe that they have a venue or they have a forum before the ICC, then that is their option. The way we look at it, Ami, is that this is a basic question of distrust. Because the Department of Justice, under the leadership of our good Secretary Jesus Crispin Boyeng Remulla, from day one, and we declared this before the world community when we went to Geneva several times last year, when we defended the Philippine performance in human rights protection, promotion, and safeguarding. We declared that the DOJ, through the Witness Protection Program, is ready, willing, and able to extend any help to the victims' families, relatives, and any witnesses who may give us the names, circumstances, and other factual information in respect to any of the so-called extrajudicial killings or suspicious deaths during that time.
Sir, let me
to
go
that,
back to the options that you mentioned a while ago. You mentioned three, pero at least two of them appear to be the same. One is ignore the processes of the ICC. The other one is to discuss the parameters of any possible engagement, if at all. I'm wondering lang if you've ruled out the possibility of just basically ignoring them if they come here. Kasi in a previous interview with Soljan Guevara, ang sabi niya dati, if they come here and they want to do their interview so long as they do not violate the law, walang problema daw, sabi ni Soljan Guevara then. I don't know if that's changed since then, pero that appeared to be very clear in that interview with the chiefs before. Na so long as they do not violate the law, they can come over and they can do their interviews so long as they do not ask us to participate or to contribute any data.
Well, actually, that could be where the total disengagement guidance given by the President Marcos, could come into play, Ed. Because when you say total disengagement, that means to say that the Philippine government will not at all extend any assistance to the ICC investigators or agents, for example, who come in here. And at the same time, we have a problem if they will exercise certain official functions here in the Philippines without the consent and without the approval of the Philippine government. And our Secretary Remulla emphasized this during one of his media interviews. And that is the probable usurpation of authority that they may be doing if the actions that they will undertake within the Philippine territory would not be with prior consent and approval and cooperation of the Philippine
Sir,
government.
but what if they do nga? What if they come here without any prior coordination? They come here as most of them don't need visas. They can just come here to go to Boracay, for example, or whatever. They come here and they do their interviews. What happens then? What happens if there is no coordination with the government? What happens if there is no official communication with the government? What happens if they do that?
Well, one of the options would be to prevent them because nobody could usurp the authority that is the mandate of the Philippine authorities only.
Yes, sir. But to that, what will happen nga then? If from the government's point of view they usurp that authority and they still come here, so what is the next step as far as the Philippine government is concerned?
If it comes to that extent, it could be a crime for them to usurp public authority. And if that's a crime, that could be the subject of criminal investigation, arrest, and prosecution.
Usec, balikan ko po yung isang sinabi nyo kanina. Sinabi nyo nga po, there are reassurances from Justice Secretary Remulla himself that acknowledging the fears and the security concerns of potential witnesses dito sa Pilipinas, that they can count on the protection from the Justice Department and all of government when it comes to investigations here. But should, in the scenario where Filipinos will take on invitations from the ICC abroad, or for that matter, just take on invitations to online investigations, does the Department of Justice and the Philippine government consider themselves stakeholders in the safety and security of potential witnesses to the ICC investigation?
Well, as far as protection of citizens, Robbie, they are citizens and they are entitled to protection from the Philippine government. If, as I said, if they believe that they have a better forum before the ICC, and if they wish to travel to The Hague for their testimony, or they want to do it online here, that's perfectly within their prerogatives.
But nga po, as you said, beyond respecting their prerogatives, does the Department of Justice offer of security and safety extend to their participation in ICC investigations?
I don't exactly get what you wish to ferret out by the word extend protection. Because when it comes to investigation, all they have to do is to give their testimonies and give their pieces of evidence, whatever it is that they have in their possession, to the investigators. But given the guidance of the president himself that there will be total disengagement at this point, then that means to say that the Philippine authorities, law enforcement agencies, and all other stakeholders that have direct interest in criminal investigation will not extend any assistance to the ICC for that matter.
Usec, the best argument against letting the ICC into the Philippines is to proceed with the investigation of these thousands of drug killings. Siguro you can give us an update dahil yun ang sinasabi ng lahat ang bagal-bagal daw kasi. That's why the ICC has to step in and para daw walang initiative to investigate the main complaint which the ICC is probing, murder as a crime against humanity. Can you give us an update along this line?
Yes, I mean, we are proud to say that the investigation is ongoing. In fact, we are in direct contact with many civil society organizations under the aegis of the United Nations Joint Program, where they are free to seek assistance as well as to give information to the government, because the UN Joint Program is one where major stakeholders from the government are represented, and there are several technical working groups there. It is already on its second year, and it's about to end this coming year. And the idea is to ensure that there be a coordinated, comprehensive effort towards promotion of human rights and to make the primacy of human rights as the cornerstone of our administration of justice.
Usec,
Let me just say that. I'm sorry, Ami.
yeah, we have a law against crimes against humanity. At this point, can you completely rule out the possibility that all these drug killings actually constitute crimes against humanity?
Well, crimes against humanity, perhaps they could, but the fact of the matter is the Department of Justice has this review panel that is tasked to verify, cross-check, and investigate all the so-called extrajudicial killings during the drug war. And this is ongoing, and we are ready, as I said, willing and able to get any information from anyone and to extend help, assistance, even protection to any of the victims' families, witnesses, or relatives. The other cases, on the other hand, are being prosecuted. We are not, we may not be aware, but there are many perpetrators who have been convicted by the courts, and they are now serving time in our correction system. And the others are ongoing. For as long as there are leads, we pursue them, and it doesn't really matter whether the case would involve any high official of the government.
Yeah, Usec, gaya ng sabi nyo nga po, and you acknowledge maybe one basic problem lang naman dito is it's a matter of trust, and it's a matter of distrust also, for that matter, from the public to the government. But to that point, it's also a matter of hope. And with the ICC promise of an investigation, one of the things that the public will allow themselves to imagine, and they're probably compelled and intrigued by, is the thought that mataas tong investigasyon na to. Aabot to sa mga nag-implement, aabot to kay President Duterte, aabot to sa mga generals, and so on. Maybe to address the issue of trust, and as plain language as we could, ano po ba ang pangako naman dito sa kabilang banda ng Department of Justice at ng Marcos administration? Para may pagtapat natin yung kung ano man ang nai-imagine ng tao sa ICC investigation and ano yung maaasahan nila in the end. Kung gaano kaigting, gaano kalakas at gaano kataas ang investigasyon ng Marcos administration sa Duterte War on Drugs.
Actually, Robbie, dyan nga nakaangkla ang aspeto ng kawalan ng jurisdiction ang ICC sa atin. Dahil doon sa Rome Statute mismo, merong prinsipyo doon na complementarity. Ibig sabihin na yung ICC ay pwede lamang pumasok kung ang isang bansa ay walang working judicial system at walang accountability mechanisms. Dito sa ating bansa, meron pong judicial system that is perfectly working and it is also available. Similarly, yung accountability mechanisms then. The accountability mechanisms means that there are available remedies to any victim, their families, or their relatives. And these accountability mechanisms are ready and available to be extended to any of those interested persons. The point is, there are existing judicial processes and the accountability mechanism is in place. This would exclude the possibility of an ICC process to come in, particularly. And at the same time, that is on the substantive point. The other area that is not being discussed quite lengthily is the procedural aspect. If the ICC now will continue on with its present investigation, it really violates the very wordings of the Rome Statute. The Rome Statute, Section 127, Paragraph 2, requires that the subject matter of investigation should be those that were initiated or commenced prior to the effective date of withdrawal of the estate subject of the investigation. In the present case, the effective withdrawal date of the Philippines was March 17, 2019. And the so-called covered crimes would cover from November 1, 2011 up to and including March 16, 2019. The unfortunate thing for the continued ICC actions or proceedings is this. The pretrial chamber decision authorizing the investigation of crimes against humanity in the Philippines was delivered to the Philippines on September 15, 2021, long after the Philippine withdrawal from the ICC. So therefore, it's already beyond the period during which cases could have been initiated and investigated. What the general public fails to understand and comprehend is that this is exactly the procedural aspect that convinced the two of the two of the judges in the ICC, including the presiding judge, to say that they don't really have any authority anymore to conduct the investigation. So on both substantive and procedural level, the actions of the ICC now would have no legal anchor anymore.
Okay. Justice Undersecretary RAUL VASQUEZ, sir, maraming salamat.
Thank you, Usec.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ami, Ed, and Robbie. It's our pleasure and privilege to be able to explain a little bit further the government's position in respect to the ICC. But let me just ask the general public, please cooperate with us. The present administration is true and committed and focused in trying to instill greater participation of the community and to ensure that we would have an effective, inexpensive, and expeditious administration of justice under the rule of law. You have all the available remedies, and the government is ready, willing, and able to extend all assistance that may be necessary in order to prosecute those who have committed crimes, whoever they are. And gaya ng sabi ng ating mahal na sekretaryo, wala po kaming sinisino dito, kahit sino man ang makakasuhan para po sa kapakanan ng ating bansa. Maraming salamat po sa inyo at maraming magandang gabi ulit.
Okay, maraming salamat po. DOJ Senior Undersecretary Raul Vasquez. And we are starting up another conversation after this break. The Chiefs will be right back.
Sa mga nakalipas na buwan, nakita natin ang pagbaba ng presyo ng bilihin sa iba't ibang mga sektor. Napatunayan natin na kayang maipababa ang presyo ng bigas, karne, isda, gulay at asukal. Our aim is to boost our local agricultural production through consolidation, modernization, mechanization, and improvement of value chains, augmented by timely and calibrated importation as needed.
Moody's Analytics warns that India's ban on rice exports could drive a potential reacceleration of inflation in the Philippines. India last week ordered a halt to its largest rice export category to temper domestic prices.
Our challenge now is inflation. We continue to focus on our mandate of price stability and have dedicated our resources and attention in pursuit of this goal. Our models tell us that inflation will be within the target range of 2 to 4% by the fourth quarter of 2023.
Welcome back to the Chiefs. Joining us now is former Agriculture Undersecretary FERMIN Adriano. Welcome back to the program, Dr. Adriano.
Good evening, sir.
Magandang
Good
gabi
evening,
po.
Ami. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, pinag-uusapan nga, as the intro said, no, is the ban announced by India on their exports of rice, non-basmati rice, including broken, and a lot of the stuff that we buy. Although we understand that we don't buy a lot of rice actually from India, but it will put pressure on our other sources. How worried should we be?
It's not really worrying, except that there will be available supply. As you said, you know, the Indian our imports from India is about less than 1% of what they said, mostly basmati. And they are banning the non-basmati or the white variety. Most of the Indian exports of rice really go to the poor African countries. Kasi the main source of our rice import is Vietnam, which is around 90%, and then Thailand about 5%, and then distributed to other countries like Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and then India. But as I said, we just import the basmati variety. I think it's because it's the kind of rice that are used by the Indian restaurants in the country. So very little. Should we be worried about it? Not to the point of panicking, but the thing is that there will certainly be pressure, upward pressure on the rice prices because it's a chain reaction effect. Considering that other grains or cereals like corn and wheat will also be affected because of the worsening, war or conflict in Russia and Ukraine. And there's substitution aspect in terms of these commodities, because we know that wheat is used to be able to make pandesal or our bread, and then corn, we also use for some corn grains or something for other food commodities. So there will be a chain reaction effect, but I think we will not run out of supply, but there will be a tendency for prices to rise.
Well, sir, actually, yun nga, sir, mukha namang walang problema sa supply per se, at least sourcing the grain. Pero the prices naman ang tatamaan, and we still haven't gotten much relief on rice prices. So what are we looking at exactly if it comes to the pricing?
I will not risk predicting the price, but because of the fact that we have imported enough rice till the end of the second quarter. Practically almost more than 1.8 million metric tons already entered the country as of June this year. 1.8 is the average annual imports that we use in the past. Yun po yun. Kaya malaki yung dumating ngayon. Ang problem natin in the next 6 months, and this particular months, the third, the second, little bit of late second and the third quarter are the so-called lean months, because this is the time when our farmers are planting. So we need to closely monitor the supply. But when I was looking at the data, the supply I think it will last for about 40 to 42 days during the peak lean season. So I think we have enough stocks to be able to reach the harvest season starting late September and forward.
Yes, sir. But 42 days is around a month and a half. But beyond that, are we certain na hindi ganun kalaki? I know it wouldn't be fair to ask you naman for an estimate as to how much yung possible.
It's tough really to predict. It depends on. I think it will really depend on the response, particularly of Vietnam and partly Thailand, because as I said, 90% of our imports come from Vietnam. If Vietnam raises its prices, well, I just saw that they've been raising it right now. That will really hurt us, because that will really lead to an increase in the prices. Because the well billed now, which is 5% broken, is hitting almost $600 per metric ton. It's only about less than 500 before. So if it's hitting $600 per metric ton, surely that will translate to higher prices of our rice.
Sir, yung 600, sir, na figure, that's as a result of this India thing, or this predates the India decision?
Can you repeat it? I didn't hear it.
Sir, yung increase, sir, to 600.
Can you repeat your question,
yes,
please?
Sir. Yes, sir. Yung increase to $600 per metric ton, is that a result directly of the India decision, or does this predate the decision of India?
Yeah, that is what you're saying. I think somebody was citing the FAO.
Yes, sir.
Warning about the possible rice prices of a lot of cereal. That's part of it. I think somebody, of course, just like any businessman, they're now speculating because of the Indian action. There's certainly the speculators or the producers in other countries thinking of higher profit will jack up their prices. So that's what I'm saying. That it depends on the response, particularly of Vietnam on the matter. But they've given us assurance that they're not going to resort to a rice export ban, which is a good news for us.
Sir, itawid natin dun sa kabilang banda naman ng total supply natin. Gaya nga ng sabi nyo, nag-aangkat tayo, we're importing so that hopefully pwede tayong maitawid into our harvest season ng mga local farmers naman natin. So, kamusta naman po ang katatayuan ng mga magsasaka natin? Where do you see them and their production by September and the fourth quarter?
I think we just had a good harvest this dry season, and hopefully we will have another round of good harvest. But it is unpredictable because of the weather that we are experiencing right now. A lot of the rice and corn farms in the north, particularly in Cagayan, have been hit also in Occidental Mindoro. So that is a real problem. we hope that we will be able to save quite a lot because it is during the wet harvest season that we get the highest yield, because even rain-fed areas can be planted with rice. But for me, I think with what the President said, with all the assistance given to the farmers like fertilizer discount voucher, pre-seeds, farm machineries, that would really help in terms of raising the productivity of farmers. Minus, of course, if there are going to be this typhoons, again, directly hitting the country. That's the question mark there. Are we going to have a destructive typhoons and then followed by a prolonged hot summer because of the El Nino? So yun, mapaka-unpredictable yun.
Mr. Adriano, President Marcos dwelled at length on of course, it's his portfolio on the agriculture sector in his State of the Nation address. And he mentioned several measures that he is pursuing, several programs. What do you think of his trust in agriculture?
I think they're good programs, except that I think we need to better track, monitor the delivery of those assistance. It's easy to report it. You can cite figures or something like that. But the problem is that, are they really on the ground? And unfortunately, when I was still Undersecretary, I was the one advocating that we need to come out or formulate or install a robust monitoring evaluation system so that we will be guided by real data or what is happening on the grounds. Unfortunately, the Department of Agriculture doesn't have that capability still. So those are figures cited, but whether they are on the ground remains to be seen. To be validated by a study. No.
At this point, do you think we are actually getting closer to the campaign aspiration of 20 a kilo rice?
As you said, it's aspiration. So, I don't think we will be able to. But I know that they're now planning. They're doing some planning right now at the Philippine Rice Research Center under the leadership of Usec Leo Sebastian. And he's introducing this early planting arrangement wherein farmers will be encouraged to plant starting December, January, up to about February or March, so that there will be early harvest and then another planting before the devastating typhoons happen during the last quarter of the year, so that we will avoid that. If there's an early planting for the dry season and early planting for the wet season, then we will be saving a lot of our palay due to destructive typhoons towards the latter part of the year. So they're doing that. That's the innovation being done under, of course, the oversight of the president. So I think that's critical because that was the technology. Basically, it's a basic technology that was adopted by Vietnam. Early planting season during the dry season. But here, the indispensable element is the availability of water. If they can plan it with NIA properly, the availability of water during the dry season, and then concentrate a lot of their technologies, particularly hybrid seeds, in these irrigated areas of about even just 1.2 million metric tons, will be able to double the yield from 4.2 to 8 metric tons. And that will practically be about 60% of our rice requirements. If they are successful in that experiment next year, it will start or latter part of this year. That will be really a significant contribution to the rice sector. Sana magawa talaga yun.
Usec,
But of course, you need a lot of support from the different agencies, NIA. Kasi yung sa dry season, what you need to do is you need to construct a lot of shallow tube well so that those marginal areas, meaning those rain-fed areas, can plant other crops. That means vegetables, legumes, or something like that. El Nino does not mean that there is no water. El Nino just means little rainfall, but there's still water. So you can actually extract water from the aquifers, provided you need technology. And this has been proven by Israelis. The Israeli, they have an arid climate, something, but it did not prevent them from becoming a world-class agricultural producers using what you call this drip irrigation combined with the latest technology in greenhouses. That can be done if we just put the necessary resources and the attention and the experts needed to do that. Kaya yun.
Sir, I'll zoom out a bit. I presume you watched the or at least followed the SONA of President Marcos. And kaya nga po na sinabi ni Ami, naglaan naman siya ng oras to talk about agriculture and our production and prices and so on. Was there anything in particular that you heard, wanted to hear, or for which you're waiting for the details?
Actually, there were 15 agendas that were listed in agriculture alone. The tone of the SONA, if I may, is it did not blame anybody, unlike before past president. It did not, the predecessors or something like that. It's a very friendly kind of SONA. The only problem that I have with the SONA is that, just like what the president did, it's all friends to all,
Enemies to none.
but not enemy to none. Parang it must please everybody. So in other words, hindi yung okay. The main problem right now, for example, is that we need to cluster or consolidate our small farms. We have to force that so that we will be able to enjoy economy scale. That's a major problem right now because of the fragmentation of our land into minuscule sizes because of the prolonged implementation of agrarian reform. But all he did was that we will strengthen the cooperative system. We've been strengthening the cooperative system for decades or something. It did not happen because if you look at the history of the cooperative system, it is a history of failure. I would rather have a strong statement like, I think it's, having said that we have emancipated the farmers from the bondage of soil last July 7, 2023, it's now time for the president to declare that I think it's now time that we have, to say that we have completed the agrarian reform program. Now we have to focus all our attention to increasing productivity and particularly the income of the farmers. And that cannot be achieved without farm consolidation and clustering because you need economies of scale. You need to put in the necessary technologies, etc., to make them efficient and competitive. I've not heard something like that. He talked about cooperative, which is nice to hear, but how do you do that? It has been there for quite some time, but it's not working, We can revise it, etc., So we can actually could say that we will encourage land lease holding so that there will be consolidation, so that you will attract foreign investors or local investors. Imagine if you're an investor, you want to go to mango production, you need at least about 500 hectares to be able to produce your mangoes of the same variety, of the same quality, and construct your processing plant in the middle. It's extremely difficult for you to deal with hundreds and hundreds of farmers planting mango of 3 to 4 hectares and planting different varieties of mango. Hindi ubra talaga di ba? Oh, same is true with pili, same is true with cacao, same is true with coffee. You need consolidation and clustering has been done in China, in Vietnam, in Thailand with no problem, because the issue here is that access to land. It is not ownership of the land per se. I think our private sector businessmen do not necessarily want to own the land. All they want is a guarantee in terms of access to land that they can make production and then build their factories.
What about the shift to in the mix of fertilizer? They want emphasis, even Usec Sebastian told us about it. They want a greater use of biofertilizers para daw makatipid yung production, and it will boost production daw actually. What do you think of that?
It is badly needed yung bio-N. Kaya lang may grade yung bio-N na I forgot the term kasi yung isa yung conversion ng nitrogen, how good it is. So if it is the local one, it is not as efficient as the one kasi gumagamit sila ng mga I forgot the term sa Australia. They use a high-level technology that can convert that can catch nitrogen in the air and convert it into nitrogen, something like that. But it's definitely important to do that because of environmental concern. Our soil has become so acidic, particularly in Central Luzon, and particularly those planted with sugar. We need to reverse that. And I think that the President is right. In fact, we need to promote biofertilization. That means trichoderma, that's the term that they use. It's a microorganism that catches nitrogen in the air, converts it into nitrogen to the soil. So that's basically what they're doing. And it has to be promoted. The only problem is the supply. In fact, we have talked to the UP Los Baños Foundation, or UP LB in general, which produces the BioN brand right now. But they cannot produce enough quantity. In fact, we were just saying, why don't you produce for about 200 to 300,000 hectares of snow? And they have difficulty because you need major investors to be able to do that. That's still at the level of initial phase of experimentation. But definitely, it's a welcome development as far as agriculture is concerned because of the fact, as I said, our soil is exhausted. A lot of them are becoming acidic. So even if you talk to sugar planters in Central Luzon or Negros, there is a productivity decline because of the fact that the soil is exhausted.
Okay. Dr. Adriano, sir, maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Salamat din po. Thank you din po. Thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Ami.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Former Agriculture Undersecretary FERMIN Adriano. And that is it for the Chiefs. For now, ako po si Robbie Alampay.
We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. I'm Ami Pamintuan.
I'm Ed Lingao. We are One News, all sides, all the time.